Today we're going to revisit the nutritional needs of the horse, asking the question, can additives really help? We have to realize that feeding horses can be a challenge, particularly with modern management approaches. Horses evolved as wandering herbivores, which meant they were designed to eat large volumes of low-quality grasses. They also are very active by nature, which helps their GI tract stay moving and also helps with their bone status as far as bone development. And we also have to realize that horses are herd animals, very social animals that have a flight mechanism, which means they'll want to run when something gets after them. But man, in all of our wisdom, we lock them up in 12 by 12 box stalls and expect them to get along. This poses some real challenges for us as far as feeding our horses. So let's just think about Equine Nutrition 101. We need to know the limitations and potential concerns of modern management feeding our horses. One of the biggest concerns is excess starch. Because as you see here, at the bottom of the graph is how much starch the horse is taking in, and then how much starch the horse can actually digest. Where we see the red line come in, you see that starch digestion starts to go away. This means that anything beyond that point, we have starch escaping into the hindgut of the horse. This is bad because when starch gets into the hindgut of the horse, it creates a very unnatural environment. Remember, grain starch is not something that horse would typically find out in nature while he's wandering around eating large volumes of low quality forage. So what we see is that when we have this unnatural environment, we start to shift the balance of the microbes. And the bad bugs, the ones that digest this starch, actually start to proliferate, or they start to grow. And when they grow, they create lactic acid. Lactic acid drives the pH down in the hindgut of the horse. And when the pH goes down, the good bugs, the bugs that actually help us digest fiber and some of the other feedstuffs, they start to go to sleep, or they actually are inhibited. So they stop functioning and fiber digestion goes down. This is a big problem because then we run into acidosis problems. And we're familiar with ulcers and that in the front part of the GI tract of horses, but then we get this environment in the hindgut where acidosis, acid's building up, and we have problems with our horses. If we do that, bacteria start to die off. Those dying bacteria produce toxins, and those toxins are what lead to things like colic, digestive upset, and ultimately founder in our horses. These are the type of problems that we run into when we're feeding our horses twice a day, putting them in a stall, and not allowing them to survive or thrive in their natural environment. So what does this really mean for feeding horses? We know that the quantity of grain that we can feed horses is limited. The graph I just showed you that we're very much restricted on how much starch a horse should get on a daily basis. It's about 400 grams of starch on the average 500 kilo body weight horse. And we also need to recognize the importance and the limitation of these bacteria. Bacteria are very important in the hindgut of the horse as they're the ones in charge of digesting fiber. They create nutrients from the grasses and hays that these horses eat, but there are some limitations on this acid size. So what we want to do is we want to maximize their efficiency for better digestibility of all feedstuffs. So the question comes back, how can we actually help the horse get more out of their diet? Well, one of the technologies that we can actually incorporate into horse feeds is something called YEA. It's a probiotic for horses. And YEA helps by stimulating two specific populations of microbes or bacteria in the hindgut of the horse. The first one is cellulolytic bacteria. These are the bugs that actually digest the fiber. They digest the fiber out of feedstuffs as well as hay and grass, etc. These are the important ones because these are the ones that provide a lot of nutrients or release a lot of nutrients to the horse. The other population we're concerned with is lactic acid utilizing bacteria. These are the bugs that actually take lactic acid and convert them into a weaker acid. Those will keep the pH much higher and we won't have the acidosis problems that lead to founder, colic, etc. And we've proven that with research. As you can see here, when we look at total anaerobes, as this is a number of bacteria in the hindgut of the horse, they increase significantly simply by putting this technology or this YEA in the diet. More importantly, you look at cellulolytic bacteria. These are the bugs that actually digest the fiber. They go up very significantly simply by putting this technology in the feed. So this is a very good thing for these types of management situations. We've also looked at other types of bacteria, and you can see here on the left side here, this is Streptococcus. These are the bacteria that actually produce lactic acid, the ones that we don't want to grow very much. We significantly reduce those numbers because we are stimulating the bugs that actually utilize lactic acid. This is once again very good for us when we look at these high concentrate type of diets. We also see the same in lower concentrate diets, diets that are made up predominantly of forage, and these diets here are about 30% concentrate, but once again, significant improvement in lactic utilizing bacteria by putting this technology into the feed. This is important for us because if we look at lactic acid production after a horse eats a grain meal, you can see by putting YEA in the diet, we keep lactic acid significantly lower in the hindgut of these horses. This is very important, and it actually allowed us to have an anti-colic claim in certain parts of the world by utilizing this technology. This is really good for us when we talk about the modern management of our horses. If we can keep acid down, logic would say that we can keep the pH up. And this actually shows that yes, we can significantly improve the pH in the cecum or hindgut of the horse by putting this YEA technology into the feeds. If the pH is higher, the fiber digesting bugs are happier. If they're happier, they're digesting more feedstuffs. And you can see that we can actually increase the digestibility of the feed by incorporating this technology into the feeds of horses. So whether it's total dry matter, protein, the different fiber fractions, they're all significantly improved by putting YEA into these horse feeds. Another interesting thing is that we found that by putting YEA into the feeds, we increased mineral digestibility, most specifically phosphorus. And the question is, why would we see that? Well, remember that a lot of phosphorus contained in feedstuffs is what we call phytin-bound phosphorus. It's actually locked up in a molecule that can only be released with an enzyme called phytase. Unfortunately, horses don't make phytase. Humans don't make phytase, but bacteria make phytase. And if we can stimulate the production of fiber-digesting bacteria, more bacteria means more phytase, which means more release of phosphorus. And in the horse industry, we're all very familiar with the importance of calcium-phosphorus balance. So by simply incorporating YEA into the feeds, we can increase the amount of mineral available to these horses. And there's a wide variety of scenarios that we're familiar with the imbalance of calcium and phosphorus in horse feeds. And like I mentioned, we know that bacteria produce phytase, and we can stimulate the populations of bacteria. More phytase means more release of phosphorus, means more availability to the horse. This is very significant, particularly in young growing horses where we have a lot of growth problems like DOD, etc. And we know that the phosphorus, whether it's coming from feedstuffs and or from incorporation of something like dicalcium phosphate into the mix of the feed, both scenarios we see significant improvements with YEA incorporated into the diet. So you can see that simply incorporating this technology allows us to get the most out of the feeds. So we know that yeast culture is most useful when the diet management or digestive conditions depress fiber digestion and or cecal function in these horses. Basically that means all the time under modern management schemes. We're putting these horses in an unnatural environment by putting them in stalls, feeding them a couple of times a day. Technology like yeast culture can have a major impact on keeping them healthy. Under specific scenarios like athletic horses, we know there's a lot of stress and digestive upset. Yeast, like we showed, can help stabilize the pH, keep fiber digesting bacteria functioning, thus making more nutrients available. And then we just visited about the importance of phosphorus and mineral availability. So in summary, YEA affects fiber digestion by increasing the number of fiber digesting bacteria in the hindgut of the horse. We can stabilize the pH, which allows all the bacteria to function properly, and we can release more minerals, particularly phosphorus, because of the availability of more bacteria producing phytase. In conclusion, natural technologies like yeast culture or YEA can be a valuable tool in improving and/or maintaining the health and productivity of our modern horses.